Can you hear it? Can you hear it? Anybody else hear that crunching sound? That would be the sound of Baltimore kneecaps being chewed up by some maniacs from the D. Yo, D, how we living? In fact, you don't even have to answer that. I already know exactly how you're living. Lion fans are dancing around like Aaron Glenn down the street right now about their new replacement coordinators. Lions fans are feeling themselves and their team right now, and they should be. Yeah, I know, it's only week 3. It's only week 3, and the Lions have much bigger aspirations than simply beating the Ravens in September. But what an impressive September beatdown of the Ravens that was. Seriously impressive win and a seriously positive sign for the Lions. Listen, conversations and debate about Detroit's championship window was still being openly held during the offseason. And by the way, valid. Like, I understand why people had their doubts. I even had some doubts myself. It definitely seemed possible that they may have missed their shot over the past 2 seasons with their stud coordinators in place and everything aligned. And then they bounced. So what about that championship window? Where does that leave them? Where does that leave it? Did it slam shut? Apparently not. That window sure as hell does not seem shut, does it? Furthermore, not only is that window still wide open, I don't think anybody in Detroit is missing either Ben Johnson or Aaron Glenn right now. In fact, if I didn't know any better, I would assume that Johnson and Glenn were still there, judging from that beating that they put on the Ravens last night. And of course, I say that as a compliment to their successors, John Morton and Kelvin Shepard. Like, Ben who? Aaron who? At least the Lions didn't put Glenn in a shallow grave and forget about him the way they did Johnson. So Glenn should consider himself lucky for that, because these dudes are still absolute savages. Maybe even more so at this point. Come to find out, the Lions aren't just a team, they're a program. A program developed, built, and led by the head savage himself, Dan Campbell. His DNA and fingerprints are all over everything they do there. He knew he couldn't hold on to Johnson and Glenn forever, just as he knew they were replaceable. So instead of getting caught flat-footed, he made sure the next 2 were ready. And clearly, Morton and Shepard were ready. That was vintage Dan Cannibal ball last night. Brutally tough in the trenches, on both sides, yet still creative and aggressive on offense. I mean, come to find out, Johnson wasn't the only one in the building who could dial up a play and take advantage of that arsenal offensively. In other words, they're still tough, they're still smart, they're still munching kneecaps, they're still going for it on 4th down, and they're still drawing up defensive or genius plays. Like, same as they ever were.
Same as it ever was.
Oh, wow. That's kind of cool. You're not hearing it on the stream, but always good to get some David Byrne in there. In fact, we never do. Same as it ever was. So Dan Campbell is showing that Dan Campbell coach teams don't rely on coordinators to look like Dan Campbell coach teams. Same as they ever were. Meantime, what about the Ravens? Meantime, John Harbaugh showing once again that he can lose with the greatest quarterback in the history of the National Football League. Now, that is not my vision. That is John Harbaugh's, quote, vision. You know, that Lamar is going to become and be known and be recognized as the greatest quarterback in the history of the league. He said that. Quick question, though, about that, quote, vision, John. Is winning big games part of that vision? Because Raven fan is still waiting for that part of that vision to start coming to fruition. To be clear, the one Raven I'm not really blaming this on, or I can't hang this on, is Lamar himself. I mean, no, he wasn't perfect, especially in the red zone. But the dude is leading the NFL in passer rating. He is completing 72% of his passes. He does have 10 total touchdowns and no turnovers so far. And yet, somehow, despite all that, the Ravens are still 1-2. So, tough to heap too much blame on Lamar. However, as much as it pains me to do so, not tough to heap blame on Derrick Henry. Look, This is an enormous Derrick Henry house. What house isn't an enormous Derrick Henry house? The guy is ionic. He's a legend. Great player, great dude. But 3 fumbles in 3 weeks, my dude? And 2 of those fumbles were absolutely crippling to the Ravens. You could say the fumble in Buffalo and the fumble last night were the 2 biggest plays of the early season so far for the Ravens, and they lost both those games. I mean, a brutal look for King Henry. My man had 3 fumbles over the past 2 years, entire seasons. And now he starts this year with 3 in the first 3 weeks. Thanks in part to Hutch flying in and punching this ball loose like a maniac himself.
This drive starts at the 21, down by 4. Handoff to Henry, and he gets it punched out. It's recovered by DJ Reed. Knocked out on the play by Aiden Hutchinson.
Wild to see this happen repeatedly to this dude. Maybe even more wild to see him completely lose his composure and have a tantrum on the sideline. Now, funny thing about that tantrum, he fumbled that too. I don't know which fumble was worse, the fumble in the game or the fumbled helmet slam. Alvin, I know you don't have the full use of your full library, but do you still have the Price is Right sad trombone? Perfect. Because that's perfect right there. That pretty much sums up the entire night for the Ravens. Meanwhile, the Lions did what the Dan Cannibal Lions do. Namely, they have that creativity and they've got that brass set to pull this option pitch play on a 4th and goal in a tie game in the 4th quarter. I mean, this is a thing of beauty. Check it.
They pitch to Gibbs. Touchdown! It went from Goff to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he pitched it to Gibbs. And like Ben Johnson would call, it was a gadget play, and boy, was that a thing of beauty.
Again, Ben who? Didn't need Ben for that one. And they also did not need Ben to dial up a wild play call on a 4th and 2 with the game on the line, and credit to Jared Goff and Amon-Ra for perfectly executing.
2. Goff keeps, floats. Amon-Ra, perfect throw and catch. Unreal.
You see the way they finished that game, and you realize that this team is still fierce on both sides, regardless of who is calling the offense. And the defense is still physical, still aggressive, still smart, and when the game is on the line, they still execute. Unlike the Ravens, who repeatedly fumble and pull crap like this on their biggest plays and most critical plays, like this 4th and goal attempt right before halftime.
That's a 1 on that play. 4th and goal. Lamar keeps and is in trouble. Ball's out. And it's Detroit's ball. Jack Campbell.
I don't know, John. That did not look like the greatest quarterback in the history of the National Football League. Again, Alvin, if it's not too much to ask, can we mix in the fail trombone once again? Because the hell was that anyway? I don't even know what the plan was there. I can't even blame Lamar for that because the whole thing was a disaster. See, that's the difference in the game right there. The Lions rise up in the biggest moments, and the Ravens melt down in the biggest moments. Even more concerning for Baltimore, and yes, Raven fan, unfortunately there is more. Even more concerning is the state of their defense. And when do we ever have to wonder about the Baltimore defense? The Ravens barely laid a hand on Goff, and they got straight up trucked in the run game all night long, which is why they now have the worst defense in the NFL through 3 weeks. No team has allowed more yards so far than the Ravens. Not even the Dallas Cowboys. Think about that. The Ravens are out-flusing the Flus. How can there be any team in the league worse than Dallas defensively? Much less a franchise whose very foundation has been built on their defense. I mean, it's all so hard to believe from the Ravens standpoint. a Super Bowl roster, but not a Super Bowl team, at least not right now. And yes, it is still early. At the same time, it is also now or never, Super Bowl or bust. And if they don't break through this season, I think it's fair to wonder if it's finally all going to blow back on the previously untouchable John Harbaugh. Because all this crap continues to happen on his watch. And there's no doubt who the better head coach, the better leader, and the better visionary was on that field last night. And frankly, it wasn't even close. I'm not throwing dirt on Baltimore yet, but I am ready to say this much. Detroit's championship window is not only open, it is wide open. While Baltimore's is out slowly once again, they are, with 2 losses to 2 actual title contenders. So 1-2, no shame in losing to Buffalo and Detroit, but it's the manner in which they lost. I'd be concerned. 1-800-636-8686 in Detroit. Man, these things all change so quickly, right? Last week, Green Bay was the team to beat, and then they choked against the Browns. After week 1, Detroit was left for dead when Green Bay beat them. And all of a sudden right now, who looks better in Detroit? Week to week,